The Civil Constitution of the Clergy, 1790, was a pivotal document in the history of the French Revolution, fundamentally altering the relationship between the state and the Catholic Church. By creating a nationalized clergy under state control, it marked a significant break with centuries of church-state relations, leading to profound tensions and deep divisions within French society. The conflict between revolutionary policies and the Catholic Church that resulted from this legislation had far-reaching political, social, and religious consequences. Background: the French Revolution and the Church. The French Revolution, which began in 1789, was a response to deep social, economic, and political inequalities. The ancient regime, which had placed power in the hands of the monarchy, aristocracy, and clergy, was being dismantled. The Catholic Church, as one of the major pillars of the old order, came under increasing scrutiny. Historically, the Church in France had enjoyed privileges and wealth, including exemptions from taxes and control over significant land holdings. However, many revolutionaries, including the leaders of the National Assembly, saw the Church's power as an obstacle to the creation of a more egalitarian society. At the onset of the Revolution, the clergy were divided. Some clergy, like Abbé Sieyès, supported the revolution and hoped to see the Church reformed and aligned with the new social order. Others, like those who supported the conservative monastic orders, viewed the revolution as a threat to both their religious and political authority. This division set the stage for the conflict that would escalate after the passage of the Civil Constitution of the Clergy. The Civil Constitution of the Clergy. Key provisions. The Civil Constitution of the Clergy, passed on July 12, 1790, was a radical attempt by the French revolutionary government to reorganize the Catholic Church in France. It sought to bring the Church under state control by making it a national institution, independent of the authority of the Pope and the Vatican. Several key provisions of the law highlighted this break from tradition. 1. State control of clergy appointments. The Civil Constitution required that bishops and priests be elected by the people rather than being appointed by the Pope. The king's traditional power to appoint bishops was thus eliminated. 2. Clergy as public employees. Clergy members were to be paid by the state and were made public employees. This undermined the Church's traditional economic base, which had been based on donations, tithes, and land ownership. 3. Reduction in the number of clergy. The number of dioceses and parishes was significantly reduced, and clergy were expected to live in their parishes rather than being involved in distant or absent ecclesiastical functions. This provision aimed to make the Church more connected to the local population. 4. Oath of loyalty. Perhaps the most contentious provision was the requirement that clergy swear an oath of loyalty to the state and the new constitution. This oath would bind them to the revolutionary government, effectively replacing the allegiance they owed to the Pope. Refusal to take the oath was seen as an act of defiance against the revolution. 5. Separation from Rome. The law effectively subordinated the Church in France to the French state, reducing the authority of the Pope. It was a direct challenge to the papal authority and to the relationship between the French Church and the Vatican. Conflict with the Catholic Church and reactions. The Civil Constitution of the Clergy was a direct challenge to the papacy and the centuries-old traditions of the Catholic Church. The reaction from the Church was swift and hostile. Pope Pius VI condemned the legislation in a papal bull, calling it an unjust and tyrannical attack on the Church's independence and authority. In addition, the Pope declared the oath of loyalty invalid and urged French clergy to resist it. This led to a split among the clergy in France. Some clergy, known as jurors, swore the oath of loyalty and accepted the Civil Constitution of the Clergy. These were typically lower-ranking clergy and those who were sympathetic to the revolutionary cause. On the other hand, a significant number of clergy, known as non-jurors, refused to swear the oath and remained loyal to the Pope and the traditional structure of the Church. The refusal to take the oath became a mark of religious and political resistance to the revolution. This division within the clergy deepened the rift between revolutionary policies and the Catholic Church, leading to increased political polarization in France. The non-jurors were viewed by revolutionary leaders as counter-revolutionaries who were loyal to the old regime and to foreign interests, while the jurors were seen as collaborators with the revolution. Social and political consequences. The divide between the jurors and non-jurors created a religious schism in French society, exacerbating existing tensions. Many ordinary French citizens who had been loyal to the church now found themselves at odds with one another, as parishioners were forced to choose between clergy who had sworn the oath and those who had not. The conflict was not limited to the religious realm, but had political implications as well. In many areas, the non-juror clergy became symbols of opposition to the revolutionary government, and their resistance helped fuel royalist uprisings, such as the Vendée Revolt. In rural areas, where the Catholic Church had been an integral part of daily life, the effects were particularly pronounced. Many peasants, who were deeply religious, refused to accept the new church structure. They saw the revolutionary government's interference in religious affairs as an illegitimate overreach. The non-juror clergy, who continued to administer sacraments and provide spiritual leadership to their congregations, became a focal point for anti-revolutionary sentiment. The civil constitution of the clergy also affected France's relationship with other Catholic countries. The French revolutionaries, by challenging the Pope's authority, alienated many Catholic monarchies in Europe, particularly Austria and Spain, which were staunchly conservative and pro-church. This international dimension heightened the perception of the revolution as a threat to the established order of Europe. The decline of the civil constitution of the clergy. Despite its bold ambitions, the civil constitution of the clergy faced significant practical difficulties. First, the loyalty oath proved deeply unpopular among the clergy. By 1791, only about half of the clergy had sworn the oath, and in many rural areas, resistance was especially strong. As a result, the law was difficult to enforce, and the division between jurors and non-jurors remained. Additionally, the revolutionaries, in their effort to assert control over the church, were unable to fully suppress religious resistance. The non-juror clergy continued to operate in secrecy, providing sacraments and religious services to those who rejected the revolutionary church. This underground church became a symbol of defiance against the government. Over time, the political situation in France grew more chaotic, particularly with the onset of the Reign of Terror, 1793 to 1794. Revolutionary leaders, led by the radical Jacobins, pursued a policy of dechristianization which involved the forced closure of churches, the persecution of clergy, and the imposition of atheistic policies. This period of extreme anti-religious sentiment further strained the relationship between the state and the Catholic Church. The civil constitution of the clergy was one of the most controversial and consequential pieces of legislation passed during the French Revolution. It directly challenged the Catholic Church's centuries-old influence in France and resulted in a bitter conflict between revolutionary policies and religious authority. The law led to deep divisions within the Church, with clergy and parishioners choosing sides, and it fueled political polarization across the country. The consequences of this conflict were far-reaching, affecting not only the religious landscape of France, but also its political stability and international relations. Although the law was eventually abandoned, the divisions it created had lasting effects, shaping the course of the revolution and the subsequent history of France.